Uplift Reserve in Halo 3 ODST is the perfect middle-of-the-road mission. Like one of the many warthogs found during the level, it's solid, it's dependable, and while it might not be the most exciting thing you'll ever come across, it does its job marvellously. It fits well within ODST's campaign too, adding pace to it at just the right time after a relatively sedate start spent getting used to the basics on the new Mombasa streets and with Buck during Tayari Plaza. As always, let's quickly catch up on events leading into Uplift Reserve before we get cracking. Above the city of New Mombasa, aboard the ship the UNSC Say My Name, a team of 6 ODSTs, Buck, Dare, Dutch, Mickey, Romeo and player character The Rookie, prepare to attack a Covenant supercarrier. However, as they drop to their destination, Dare changes the trajectory of the squad's pods before an EMP caused by the Covenant ship entering slipspace stops their parachutes from deploying. The Rookie regains consciousness some 6 hours later and begins searching the streets for the rest of his team, with the first clue he finds being Dare's helmet. During the ensuing flashback, we find out that Buck tried to locate Dare but ended up finding her helmet and Romeo instead. Next, the Rookie tracks down an optics package, which marks the start of the flashback to Uplift Reserve and Dutch's story, which is where we'll begin proper. Uplift Reserve begins with Dutch watching a pair of wombats fly overhead as he begins his journey.
Good hunting, boys. I'm keeping my boots on the ground.
Starting out equipped with a Spartan laser is a choice by Bungie I'm a big fan of. It's obviously a powerful weapon, but you're not just given it for fun. With there being so many Covenant out to get you, there's always the distinct possibility that they manage to destroy the vehicle you're travelling in, leaving you stranded on foot at a moment's notice. The Spartan laser then is something of an insurance policy. If you do happen to suddenly find yourself standing mere meters from a brute chopper or wraith, you'll still have something that can make light work of them to hand. It dramatically reduces the possibility of you finding yourself stuck without a vehicle and without a means of destroying enemy vehicles, which would be a very tricky scenario to tackle indeed. During the intro to this video, I waxed lyrically about the Warthog as a vehicle, and while I will always love them in all their wonderful forms, I do have a couple of complaints. I'm not going to moan at length about the AI's pathfinding, as I've done so plenty of times before, and we all know it's a bit dodgy. I do find one aspect of it a little strange though when it comes to Uplift Reserve in particular, and that is the way any allies driving vehicles you're not also in have a really hard time making their way from one area to the next. Building up a small convoy as you progress, if you manage to keep your allies alive, is rewarding when it works, but I often find it impossible to make it happen as they really don't seem to understand how to navigate their environment. This clip of me fighting off some banshees about sums it up. I fought through the area leading up to them alone as no marines opted to join me, and then a single warthog randomly showed up out of the blue, a warthog which then refused to get involved any further following its arrival. My second complaint is one I need not be so verbose about, and that is that the ODST Warthog is not my favourite in the series. Its handling is quite sluggish and it feels slower than in other games, so I tend to avoid getting behind the wheel of one as much as possible. Granted, it's never been the speediest of vehicles, and on this occasion it could just be my imagination, but in ODST specifically, its movement often feels glacial. Anyway, that's enough complaining. Let's now talk about a couple of auditory positives, Uplift Reserve's soundtrack and Dutch's dialogue. This is one of those levels where the soundtrack accompanying the action is perfectly suited. The tracks Ground War and Oscar Mike are percussion heavy and complement the weighty vehicle-based combat really well, and then during the mission's latter stages, the Menagerie, a track similar in tone but with a lot more going on, kicks in to keep things intense. Dutch is also a great character, and while he doesn't have a ton of lines during this mission that you won't hear in this video, he's consistently entertaining throughout ODST's campaign in general. His dialogue is along the same lines as Buck, quite quippy in nature, but I personally slightly prefer the way Dutch is written, with his humour being a little bit drier. Oh, and slightly off topic, but if you have a spare 20 minutes, make sure you go watch the episode of Halo Legends titled The Babysitter he stars in too, as it is excellent. Reaching the level's halfway point, you witness the fall of the new Mombasa space elevator as you cross a bridge leading to the next area.
Look! The elevator! Incoming!
What the hell just happened?
The subspace rupture! Must have weakened the support rings.
It's a fantastically choreographed moment that goes a long way towards showing just how bleak the reality is for humanity and those remaining in New Mombasa especially. Most of you, I'm sure, will already be aware of this, but you'll have actually seen the end result of the space elevator's collapse during Halo 3 mission Tsavo Highway. There, various parts of the structure lay strewn across the savannah, and it's a neat touch that you're later able to witness how they ended up there. Speaking of Tsavo Highway, it's perhaps a tad reductive to describe Uplift Reserve as its sister mission of sorts, but I don't think that description is too far off the mark. Tsavo Highway is a much longer, more involved experience without question. However, the two do share many similarities. There's the aforementioned space elevator, their aesthetic is near identical, and the way they're structured isn't altogether different either. Uplift Reserve is a series of narrow paths connecting looping, open areas designed for vehicular combat against wraiths, ghosts and choppers, while Tsavo Highway is, you guessed it, almost exactly the same, except it's got a bit more to it, and there are no ghosts. Each arena is expressly designed for vehicles, and they all have a wonderful circular design which makes it easy for you to constantly rotate around the battlefield, as opposed to having to push forward directly into the Covenant as Halo Combat Evolved and 2 tended to encourage. It's a style Bungie really began to utilise more from Halo 3 onwards, and it's on full display during ODST as well. I always enjoy Uplift Reserve's final couple of encounters too. The first is a really entertaining battle around a landing pad which feels like a callback to a certain set piece in Halo Combat Evolved. In Truth and Reconciliation, before entering the Covenant ship, you had to hold off waves of enemies who travelled down to a landing pad to greet you, while in ODST you take part in a more straightforward firefight with baddies who are already waiting for you. Admittedly, the similarities are only skin deep, so you might consider it a tenuous comparison at best, but it's what always springs to mind whenever I play through this section. There's also a crazed Marine who can be found not too far away.
Semantics! This whole place is one big cage!
Listen, Marine, you're wounded. You gotta try and relax.
Except we're the zebras, get it? All fenced in and ready for the slaughter!
And the Covenant?
They're the lions! Rawr!
Crazed Marines are something of a Halo tradition by this point, with one featured in 343 Guilty Spark.
Stay back! Stay back! You're not turning me into one of those things! I'll blow your brains out! Get away from me!
Floodgate in Halo 3 also had one.
The LT, the sergeant, they were all infected!
And later, another would appear in Reach during New Alexandria.
Seriously, we're fighting aliens now? Indies were bad enough, now we got freaking aliens? Not me, man. I'm out. Out!
Your last tangle with the Covenant is much the same as the last, with more ground troops and wraiths to be dealt with, after which it's time for you to make your escape. To conclude proceedings, you're left with no choice but to launch yourself off a makeshift ramp, and the scene which follows will change to match the vehicle you end the level driving. If you used a Warthog or a chopper, then that's what you'll see, and likewise if you're piloting a ghost.
Lord? I didn't train to be a pilot. Tell me I don't have any more flying to do today. So, was that a yes or a no?
Uplift Reserve does exactly what it says on the tin. It uplifts things, adding pace to Halo 3 ODST following a relatively slow opening consisting primarily of exploration and on-foot combat. It includes the solid level design you'll have come to expect from Bungie, and it's also got great music, it features one of the more cinematic moments in ODST's campaign, and it has plenty of high-intensity encounters focused on vehicular combat to sink your teeth into. If we're being honest, it's probably not going to win any awards for being the most avant-garde slice of Halo ever created, but considering where it sits in the game, it does exactly what's required of it. Thanks for watching the video, boys, girls and Spartans. If you had a warthogging good time, do consider liking, subscribing and sharing your thoughts, and with any luck, we'll meet again soon.